Greetings, greetings. Dr. Ayman Blak here. Engaging, initiating a process that is driven by a ancient desire to know, the desire to know. I welcome all ones and ones who are within earshot or within the visuals. To help I and I to what I call launch a Sunday school. This Sunday school officially is being named Black Sunday School. And why Sunday school? We know that school at a general level operates from Monday to Friday. Some schools do studies on Saturdays. But the tradition that African people are coming from, Black people, Sundays have always been a day that the owners of the plantation would insist that the African people find time to rest. And in that rest, they must worship. And within that worship is a divine entity called Almighty God. No, we meaning all ones and ones of African ascendancy in the Western world called under Christianity, have been exposed to a certain level of indoctrination that is often overlooked because it happened so early in the lives of our foreparents and even within the life of our children. A very, very serious ritual is imposed upon the consciousness of Black people, and it has an impact for the rest of our lives. But I'm saying it is planted so early and it's planted so deep that it has become almost unlikely that attention will be turned to this level. So the level that I'm speaking of now is a level of indoctrination that we undergo during the process called Sunday school. And Sunday school was an imposition. And as children, when we went to Sunday school, the basic teachings and stories and histories all came from one book. So it's a school that had one book, an entire school. So we have to look at what was the nature of that school and how was that school impacted our present day awareness of our real self. What happened in Sunday school? We have to look how the Sunday school thing evolved. What were the foundation teachings, and have we let go those foundation teachings? So we can just start the journey in retrospect, looking at our, as an African people, our contact with the colonizers and enslavers, and the leap out of Africa into the Western world in captivity, not as slaves, but as prisoners. Prisoners of war, a great race war between Europeans and the dark-skinned people, Africans. So we basically setting a foundation historically to put this Sunday school in a context where it is perhaps easier to understand. And what it has done to us, even our greatest liberators and achievers. The curriculum. What was the nature of the curriculum? And at the age at which I and I have been exposed to Sunday school, is an age even before basic school at a certain level. So the information that is put in our young child's brain, it becomes almost like cement, becomes foundation, hardly ever touched again. So I have to look into what has been the nature of those teachings in Sunday school. What is it as what has it contributed to either our liberation or our state of enslavement? The thing about the Sunday school, what I just want to raise early in this series of reasonings, is that the one thing that everybody in the audience was not allowed to do, nobody could ask a question. No one could ask a question to the person delivering, the pastor. And so there are thoughts that probably run through our minds as children that we could never dare ask out of fear, grounded in the fear of the Lord and disrespect, fear of being feisty, and all of these types of fears. So, the foundation of Sunday school is to impose upon our consciousness the idea of the all seeing, all powerful God the Almighty. So, after being drilled in the plantation from early in the morning, 4 a.m., until way down in the night, from Monday to Friday, half day Saturday, Sundays left to the controlling of the spirit and the soul. And so the stories that we are told now out of this book become foundation because as a people we don't have the language now to question even the meaning of the words that we are taking in. We don't know anything about figurative speech. I don't know about literal and metaphorical and para what it means to connote versus to denote. We don't know them things there, even up to today. So the literature given to us in Sunday school now was based upon Bible stories. And in this initial look at that book, I want to kind of make it clear that it's a book that has been fiddled with for centuries. Chapters taken out and taken in and edited and re-edited and going through language changes. But there are certain fundamental stories that remain. And these stories now, primarily, I'm saying, rest in 3 books. So this Sunday school will focus on penetrating just 3 out of the 60-odd or 80-odd books of King James Version of the Bible. Those 3 books, the Revelations, the Genesis, and the Exodus. So those 3 books will be the foundation of the inquiry into the Sunday school curriculum and the impact it have had on I from that time till this time. At the same time, Blak Sunday School is proposing that the foundation books for this school will rest in the hands of the philosophy and the writings and opinions of Marcus Garvey. So the Marcus Garvey Philosophy and Opinions is one of the foundation texts of this Blak Sunday School. And there will be 2 more other books I'll be mentioning. And these books have bibliographies that lead us to even greater writers. So the foundation of Blak Sunday School is that it cannot be a school of philosophy and religious thought cannot be grounded in one book. That's a monotonous, it's a kind of monolith type of control. So the stories now that I really want to look at in this first edition of this Blak Sunday School is the order of the books that they give us and the story, and that very first story that speaks about creation. It has captured the imagination of one and all, especially as a child. You as a child, 4 years old, 3 years old, and you begin to hear about stories of creation. There is no difference in your meditation between what is literal and what is metaphorical and what is a simile. Everything is just literal. So you basically hold on to these stories as facts and realities. This is as children. Imagination is a powerful tool. And oftentimes, if you can capture imagination, you capture the other aspects of the personality. Because imagination is really the side of creativity and all sorts of works take place there. So to give us the narrative that tells us how the world began. And we kind of figured it, say it must begin. We kind of just assume that because we are some way, somehow concluded that everything must have a beginning. And in that, holding on to that idea now, the book that has been given to us as a book of truth and the words of God, it starts by saying, in the beginning. Now, when you hear that story in Sunday school, you can ask the pastor, sir or mom, what beginning is that? When did that beginning take place? You can't ask any questions. So issues of time are just inserted because you assume that there's a beginning, and the implication of that assumption is that there is something that started it, and that thing is given an identity. All of these things now are taking place where? In the thought powers of man. These are not practical, literal things, you know. This is the imagination at work. And they come up with a notion that there had to be a first cause. And as a youth, you begin to reach the idea, yeah, well, there must be a beginning, and then you ask, so what caused the first cause? And them say, you can't ask that. So you want to know, how did God begin? And they say, you must not ask that, otherwise you shall go to hell and damnation and things. So your thought process is shut down, and you become a cowering individual under the fear of questioning. And it makes asking questions now coming like the original sin. So thought power is what we need to recognize now that is being manipulated. We are told that in this beginning, there is a creator force that made heaven and earth. I'm not even going, I'll just say the next few lines. And the earth was void and without form, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Yeah, you hear that? Darkness was upon the face of the deep. No, I have no idea what the face of the deep is, but I have a better idea as to what darkness is all about and how long darkness has been in existence as a power. So the story begins to unfold. And we're going to just look at the first line. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Now, as people on the planet here, when we get that story, we hear that and we say yes. But the narrative now continues now to speak about the earth and how the earth has been formed and how various life forms come on the earth and evolution. And the entire narrative of the creation mythology talks to you about earth. There's no argument or position now about what happened in heaven. We just hear that the God created heaven and earth. And from earth created, all we hear is tribulation and stories and sins. So I ask now, what happened in heaven? Because it said God created heaven and the earth. Now I as man now, I and I on the earth, and we're going through all sort of experiences, all sort of pleasant feelings, all sort of agonies, all kind of things. So oftentimes a man will ask the question, what is this journey and experience all about? So the query about in the beginning and God's creation, this school don't really want to necessarily travel down the path of what happened in the earth right away. We want to explore what happened in heaven. Because whatever happened in heaven, happened before anything take place on earth. I want to recognize the timing, what I'm speaking to know. Whatever happened in the heaven happened before things happened on the earth. So in the narrative and in the system that we get it now, we don't have the power to ask those type of questions. We just follow the story that God created the earth, and then he made the sun, and he made the moon, and he separated that from the that, and the that was that, and the oceans and the names. And we get that story straight down to the sixth day when God became plural and said, let us. The same God that was said in the beginning created heaven and earth was a singular entity. And by the time you reach verse 6, God becomes plural. This is just how the language expresses itself. So God said, let us and them. And we saw it's a plural constructs now, realize it's more than one. But you're not allowed to use your imagination. You have to stay to the script. And in the script of Sunday school, you're actually told what to believe and how to believe it. When the Sunday school began to evolve now and the pastorship now was being passed over to black people, the original black pastors had to have a white man sitting in the church, while in preaching. They call that man the monitor. His job was to make sure so that man, that black pastor don't lose the script. So it's a very organized, and some people want to call it education. It's a really indoctrination, a system that captures the imagination from early through stories. So you develop the notion of fear from Sunday school. That is where you learn about the fear of God. Sunday school. And it's in the Bible stories now you learn about the fear of God, because God is really a wicked warrior. And God gets so vexed that God wipe out the earth already. That will keep you feeling very, very anxious, But you're unable to ask those questions. So at a certain level now, everybody kind of hang on to these things as truths and are unwilling to revoke what is not true. So you move from that education into primary school, and you no longer really being encouraged necessarily to go to Sunday school. No, you really want to go to church. And the same indoctrination now continues through the church, wherein you still can't ask any questions. So before this particular venture is out now, I want us to try to turn our attention now to what really, where in the Bible now do we find what happened in heaven? Where in the Bible? Because I would think that this story about what happened in heaven should come first. That should be the beginning. That should be the Genesis. What happened in heaven? And those who are Bible scriptural students, I wonder if they really know where the story can be found. Where can we find the story that speaks to what happened when God created the heaven? We not talk about the earth here, because we there so now I try understand and understand what the rest of that story was all about. How the God could have made a male first, and then forget, say, the reproduction of a guan, even though reproduction is a feature of existence. In all of the plant and animal kingdoms are made before them were made. So it become a sort of issue when we're looking at the manifestation of a beginning. So the thought process must be liberated. And the idea of being made out of the earth in sin and iniquity, make us see where all of this come from. Let us see where war and destruction come from. It had to exist before it even manifests on the earth. So we have to now look into the heaven. So I will assist by providing a little information as to where it is actually found. Where in the Bible do we find the battle that took place in heaven? Because there was a battle in the people. So get this now in terms of time. So God made heaven and the earth, and before any life form and anything go up on the earth, God make heaven and heaven engage in a war. Black people that have nothing to do with we now, We're not involved in them war vibrations, within the God now, We're not a God of war, And yet, at the same time, two armies are established. And this story now, interestingly, is found not in the book of Genesis, but in the book of Revelations. Now, you figure that out. This story that should have come before what happened on earth is coming in the very book that they call the last book. This is a major shift. This is a major shift. And this war now that was manifested in the heaven was between Michael, the archangel, which is God's army side, and them Lucifer and his angels. And the two set of angels went to war. God stand up and watch, you know. Because as usual, them money don't fight. They want to have two armies and them armies fight it out, just like nowadays. The generals and the man who pushing the button are miles away from the dead scene. So, the struggle of good and evil is presented to us now. And yet, the struggle and the nature of war manifests in a heaven that was created by a perfect, almighty God. Did angels die? It's war, you know. Were angels captured and turned prisoners? All we are told, Revelations 12, that the losing side were all kicked out of heaven. And they call the leader of the crooked side now the devil. They said the devil now was lose the war and was thrown out. And where do you think he was thrown? He was thrown to earth. People, it's the same Bible say this now, you know. But the story that is being presented is put in the last book. So how could a man even at that point in time begin to put forward the story of what happened long before Cain and Abel and Moses and all of these people? I Blak Sunday School. I look into the whole nature of the programming and how we are hooked on that book. And it is the stories in the book, particularly in those three sections of writings. Because the rest of it is a whole of prose and poetry and songs and there's a mighty gathering of literature. But the Sunday school curriculum has imposed upon the brain of the young black people and hold it to the death that Genesis is a reality. The book of Genesis. And that black people really coming out of this thing called Adam and Eve, and that there's a garden named Eden that was in Africa. All of this was written by English scholars. This is King James scholars locating a garden in a situation that will control the meditation of the black people. Because now we're claiming Eden more than the white man. We're claiming Eden more than anybody who have read the book. And what is that? We're claiming Noah, a mythological destruction of a world, and then we have to recreate our existence coming out of a boat. That is a self-destruction, minimizing process. So the Sunday school thing, I think, has done tremendous damage. And whether the individual rises to the level of professor or engineer or pilot or top sportsman, that education remains, that indoctrination. So the fear of the law remains at the foundation of the black man, no matter where and what him do. Still putting God in front of him all the time. And that was the message of the European slave owners. Condition us to put God in front of us, so him don't have to watch we anymore. It's God that watches us now, you know. Because remember now, God has been given these characteristics of being omni this and omni that and omni everything. So the colonialists have organized this God as a controlling agent. And not just the notion of God, it's the biblical God. It's the God of Moses, the God of Noah, the God of Jesus. This is the God line that has captured the mind of black people. The Indians recognize the power of a God and many gods. The Chinese have them pantheon of gods, but none of those gods are saviors. None of those gods who are going to rescue any race of people from any other race. So the process of investigation will continue, particularly in those three books that I mentioned. And the corollary or the counteraction to that one book must be set up in our and amongst our own writers. Philosophy, opinions, thought power, Marcus Messiah Garvey. So the Black Sunday School will be speaking about economic empowerment, which the Sunday School of the Plantation Society tells you that it is a blessing to be poor, and where poverty is glorified, and the poorer you are, the nearer you are to the Lord. So we have to move away from that type of meditation and make the distinction between the philosophy of Marcus or the philosophy of Jesus. For 2025 years, as a people, we have been controlled by the philosophies of Jesus, built upon the foundation of the philosophy of Moses. And none of those philosophies have taken the African race and the black people any closer to them original self. It's only one philosopher that has come forward that has given us a philosophy that takes us right into our own being, and that is the Marcus Messiah Garvey. So the philosophy of Garvey must supersede and begin to run away the Jesus talk. Where you turn in the next cheek and you're glorifying your poverty and you're blessed that you're meek and all of this humiliation thing. We have to abandon that. And rather than look for the kingdom that is in the heart, want the kingdom now on the planet Earth. And that kingdom come through the controlling of minerals and natural resources. We never learn in Sunday school anything about economics. We will talk about saving our soul and giving up our tithes. We would save our money and give it to the church. So, this is it. Initial Blak Sunday School. You can drop me a text, or rather you can drop me an email at iblak.com, iblak@yahoo.com. Or you can check me out on the Facebook, Blak Iman Blak. You can visit my website, www.imanblak.com. No, it's not necessarily just religious reasoning gonna run through this school. It just happened that the concept of the Sunday school is a kind of burning issue in my orientation. But within the school, people, we have some science and some foundations subjects that we'll be going through regularly. A, B, C, D, E, F, G of thought power, astronomy, biology, chemistry, culture, philosophy, psychology, sports, sex, entertainment, politics, economics. These are some of the foundation knowledge systems that we have to interrogate and engage with in trying to build a consciousness that is not grounded in fear, particularly the fear of the Lord. Because it requires now supreme confidence. Not just confidence that you have before the race is won and you have won before you have, not that. Talking about supreme confidence. So supremacy of confidence manifests in action. It's not reciting, it's action. And we have to move from praying and waiting and living in inertia. We have to move a gear, we have to change energy, initiate, we have to begin to think. And the thinking comes when you begin to release yourself from the fear of damnation. You see the teachings in Sunday school again define us as individuals having mind, body, and soul. Is that them tell us? And them tell us that the most important of those three is your soul. That is what I and I was told. And so you must do all the best in your lifetime to protect your soul. But you're going to realize after a while that the other aspects that you're not paying attention to, which is your mind and your body, become controlled and colonized, refused and confused and abused. Your mind and your body. And that's what the plantation owner wants to have control over. You can keep the soul. Let me say you can go on with the soul talk. Give us the soul idea. And that we begin to compete with one another whose soul is who's more righteous in this. Getting the soul purified that it can get through the gates where the camel can go through. It's teachings, indoctrinations. And until we develop a courage to examine without fear. And again, it's fear of your soul going to hell and burning in this eternal fire. When I look out and I experience the sun in its almighty glowing condition, that is it. That is it. And if I and I can live under that sun, then there is no fear of eternal fire. And then they're going to tell you, no, it's not a literal thing. No, it's figurative. So it's a figurative. Yeah, so your soul is a figurative figure of speech then. Soul is not tangible. Soul is not real then. So we have to revisit all them constructors, reconfigure our meditation, and realize this mind, body, soul thing is something that we have to work out. And we have to put a greater reverence now, not just on the soul, but put more emphasis now on our bodies. Because when the body breaks down, you just continue as a little robot until you fade away. So the body is the center, but slavery and the tribulation make you disown your own body. We literally sometimes just moving through. So we have to reclaim blackness, reclaim our bodies, reclaim the powers of our skin. It's a reclamation. So it's not just looking out at what has been put there for centuries. It's transformation. So that's why the various subject matters become important. Biology, astronomy, where we begin to recognize that even in the same book that they give us to start the world about the heaven and the earth, what really is the heaven? Where is the heaven? Does the heaven include Mars? Does it include Sirius? Does heaven include other solar systems? So we go up dunce to our environment at the global and international and cosmic level. Most of our intelligence locked up into an idea that our birth in our thought process came from some people who were made out of dirt. It's the indoctrination. So astronomy, biology, chemistry, spelled with a K, K-H-E-M, which means black. Study of blackness is chemistry. And we are chemical beings. We are electrochemical magnetic beings. So that's an important science to penetrate regularly the various levels of energy and relate energy now to the energy that manifests within the eye energy, and how you can elevate the vibrations of your own energy. Yeah, how you can use your own energy now to manifest what you are thinking. So philosophy again, important to question the logic behind religious beliefs. Economics, the power without which you are under control by those who have economics. And the ways of the world now shows that the economics defining who have the biggest armies, and the armies define who have the power. So you see why Garvey told us that we must get power in all forms. So this forum, Black Sunday School, I'm on Blak, your chancellor. We'll be running some series of interviews and reasonings as the year goes on. Sports, important aspect, world affairs. And I'm going to just segue a little bit now into sports because something of significance happened in Jamaica last week, Thursday. This is in the month of March. The football fraternity was in high spirits because the player who was considered in the modern times the greatest, he and his team had to come to Jamaica to play a return leg match. I'm talking about now Lionel Messi. And Messi has been and is who he is. I will not try to describe Messi, but world champion, everything in the soccer world. So he's coming with a team, and he's playing with a team in Miami, Inter Miami, and they're going to play against the Jamaican team in the return leg. In the first leg, the Miami team defeat the Jamaican team named Cavaliers. They beat them 2-0. And so the return game was kind of mathematically settled already. But in the first leg, Messi didn't play. So in the second leg now in Kingston, Jamaica, whether it is publicized whether Messi going to play or not, just the notion of Messi's team coming into the stadium, it put nearly 30,000 people in the stadium. The stadium has not seen that amount of crowd for football since 1998, since the Reggae Boys' time. Over 25 years ago, have we seen a crowd like this at a football match in Jamaica. So there you see the hunger for and the desire to see good footballers. And the funny thing about it now, and the tragedy and the irony, is that 95% of the crowd that went there never go there to see Cavaliers play. And they never go there to see Cavaliers win either. So interestingly, the crowd in its great majority was supporting the visitors. Full backing the visitors, meaning them backing Messi. And it's stay away because you would think so the home side would get the greater amount of support than the visitors. Yet in our situation, we have it a different way. I don't know where that kind of thing come from. I don't know if it's happening in other places of the world where visiting teams are cheered on over the home side. But it's a strange behavior. I buck it up somewhere already in Eastern Jamaica where the visiting team, the people hope that them win. And I try to find out where that come from, And maybe it's because we cater to tourists so often. But when the tourists come, we don't even want to beat them up. We don't want to rough them up because we may damage the product, which is tourism. Enough time the football side take beating because we don't want to put on clappers for a certain man in the game because it will hurt the country's image. Yeah, it's kind of rough. So the football world was able to capitalize on Messi's visit. The team won 2-0, and nicely, Messi came on, and by the time him come on, before him come off, him score one, and that was it, end of the game, 2-0. And I guess everybody was fighting now to get a photograph with him and so forth and so on. And the team went away, and the Jamaican football in general is not necessarily better off because the notion of investment and development in Jamaican football is not there, The massive support was by corporate Jamaica was for this one match because they could gain from this as a promotion. And in our scenario in Jamaica, football is not seen as a tool of development. It is used as a tool of promotion. So the whole heap of things to get it going professionally. But we congratulate Cavaliers still because they are the Caribbean champions. That's why they could get a chance to play this far. And the coach of the Cavaliers team is unrated in Jamaica. Yeah, he has no ratings in Jamaica, yet he's the coach of a team that can win the Caribbean Championship and the Jamaican Premier League. So it makes you wonder sometimes what is the criteria being developed to identify who are good coaches in Jamaica. The whole of the thing is still friendly, still amateur. So there's quite a way to go in that area. And so without even trying to cover all the grounds now, I have to come a little bit more contemporary and look at the world and its geopolitical rearrangements. Because part of the foundation of the school is history. And history oftentimes is based upon your perspective, standpoint, whether you're centered in a particular place or not. And the school is centered in Africa, Alkebulan, Afrocentric perspectives, looking out on the world. And looking out on the world now, it's really kind of topsy-turvy. It's a time of opportunities for organization. We are all living in the Trumpian world experience. And in that experience, groups of people and countries are being forced to unite amongst them own self in defense of Trump. It's a backwards process of people finding a way to unite, The South Africans are a little bit slow in catching on to it that it's time for a racial unity without any apology. The greatest thing happening presently in this topsy-turvy world of chaos is happening on the African continent. What is happening on the African continent is not being broadcast by any mainstream media because the results of what's happening there is counterproductive to what the agenda of Europe and America is all about. There's a renaissance taking place in Africa, people. Let me say, there's a renaissance taking place. The African Renaissance is on, and it's not a theoretical liberation thought. It's a practical, political, economic set of activities taking place. Led right now in Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Chad, in Senegal. Those countries have formed a union. And in that unity, they have recognized the need to dismiss European forces out of the countries. France, for example, has perhaps a quarter of the world's gold. It controls 1/4 of the entire world supply of gold, but there are no gold mines in France. And the leadership of France insists that that should remain as it is. But guess what happened? The leadership people, the modern day leadership of these African youths, 35 and 40 years old, them say, go away with that. Them say, you don't have any of the minerals that you claiming that you own in your country. And for centuries, we have it under our feet and taking it out and giving it to you, and you carrying it over to Europe and then making things and sending it back to us. And we have to pay out of what we don't have. So here what happened now. Ball game change. We are going to control the ball. And we are going to juggle it in Africa. And we are going to build refineries in Burkina Faso. And these things are taking place. And so the resources now are being rechanneled now into the African society. Not based upon class and that ism, but based upon your needs. So the revolution, the renaissance is on. And why it is a renaissance? Because it's a transformation, it's a shaking off of a colonial order. The man in Burkina Faso have removed all the names of the French out of the streets. There's no street name after anybody or in the French language. They've taken out the wigs off of the head of the courts. So it's a cultural, cultural remake. And the symbols are important when we remake that consciousness. So regardless of what's going on now over in Europe and Asia, and North America and the Caribbean and all these sites of war, I want to keep focus on where the bright spark is manifesting itself. And it is in the western side of Africa, where American troops are now told to leave, where the French have been told to leave. They have left already reluctantly. And the leaders of Africa now are saying, we're talking about Captain Ibrahim Traore. We must know his name, the way we know about Moses and Matcha and Mark. Ibrahim Traore. And he has set the foundation that even the prisoners have been turned loose to go out and become farmers. And the prisoners have celebrated that they have something that they can claim to put into their own consciousness, that they have an identity now. We here in Jamaica have the prisoners, them feeding them all kind of things 3 times a day, and none of these men work and contribute anything to the society. So we have to keep our eyes focused on the positive, because there is a decline rapidly taking place in one of the great empires. There's no doubt about it that the mighty empires are shifting, global realignment. And in that realignment now, the African people must find themselves aligned. We have to become aligned. And in that alignment, power through economics and the military is essential. It's not the power of prayer. We don't want no prayer warriors. We want warriors who understand astronomy and engineering and are scientists. That we can tap into the resources and create those products that Europe and America must buy. So the ball game shifts and the power shifts. So certainly we could speak about the destruction taking place since the Fourth World War started. And again, another perspective in history. What we're seeing now, 2025, and the argument presented by the American president that the Ukrainian president is playing around with World War III. These are arguments of bluster, and these arguments are historically incorrect. If we use our own intelligence to look at the nature of these wars as they have unfolded. So the way the wars them have been brutal and amplified. Like I said today, I think it begins somewhere else besides on Earth. And obviously the wars start from in heaven. I mean the wars vibrations come here. Humankind decide to amplify it because of differences and I am emphasizing differences through conflict. Now, from the transatlantic movement of African people, prisoners brought into the West within this war. We know about wars in the colonial states, wars in the Caribbean, Maroon wars against the British. We know of all kind of wars from them time there, right up into the early 1900s. But we get educated to think that wars began at World War I, as they label it. And so whenever we are talking about wars in the world, we always talk about World War I and World War II. But we can use our own savvy now as intelligent black people. And let us say World War I was a war between countries in Europe. So it wasn't a world war, world in the broad sense of the word. It was a European war. It was the first European war in that context, even though they've been warring with each other as tribes for hundreds of years. And we know what happened in that period. Like the Mussolini business and them tried to overpower one another. And it never really worked until we hear that there was a World War II. And this World War now was, again, Europe center, but then bringing some more countries involved in it. And we call that World War II. And we experienced a political state called the Cold War, when the man them stopped fight directly against each other, fighting through proxies, was still at war. Hot war and Cold War. Now the Cold War has ended. But in 2001, a war was declared at a global level again. It was called the War Against Terrorism. And that was not just a war in America or Europe, that was a global war. And you think that the wars are over. We envision a time when World War III would come and there would be nuclear bombs and destruction. But World War III has come and gone under the form of war on terrorism. It was brought to a close by the Biden administration when they pulled out of Afghanistan. But they think it's over. Immediately thereafter, World War IV starts. Because that war now would be a biological war. And the one that was really global. Talking about the COVID business. These are world wars, where the man them fighting with biological weapons and serious war going on, and we think that just through no material gun now fire, there's no war. So I've gone to four world wars already. We're on the brink of the fifth world war. And this world war will include what happens in space. So it's gone beyond just on the ground now. The satellites, and it's proven that the satellites are important in communicating with soldiers on the ground and the military. And if a man like Elon must get up and say, well, all right, I'm shut down for him thing. Nothing goes on in certain places. So we continue to examine and observe how the world is unfolding and see that the power issue, the realignment of power in the world from the end of World War II now has undergone an attack. In other words, now since World War II, and I'm say let there be peace, the two world powers set up a system of control, the whole earth. Two world powers, United States and the USSR. And all of that going on, African people were just units of labor. We're at a stage now when the two countries that were the deadliest enemies, Washington and Moscow, these two have become almost best friends now. This is unimaginable. It's unimaginable that Washington and Moscow are now allies. Something fundamental has shifted. And in that shift, the balance of power in the globe has also shifted. Because the Russians are not only Washington's best friend, the Russians are also the good friends of the Chinese and the North Koreans and all the nations who the so-called democratic countries think are totalitarian. The creation of the BRICS economics captures about 2/3 or more of the world's countries, putting together a new economic platform, and again, putting the present power in a further state of decline. So when it comes to history, This school does not view history through the lens of any Bible. View history through the lens of events and personalities of men and women throughout time. That is the foundation of analysis. And in terms of history, there is no beginning of time, and there is no end of time. So it's location through events and through persons. And we use physical objects that are still in the earth as markers, objects like the pyramids. And in those markers, we have evidence of anciency that goes beyond and before the pyramids, of civilizations that were very versed in solar systems and high levels of mathematics and physics and chemistry, knowing the science of mummification, high chemistry. So I will not speak of history as limited by a one book that suggests that there was a beginning 6,000 years ago, and then there was a flood that drowned everybody, and then there was another beginning. And then there was another end, because another beginning started by in the beginning was the Word. So to give us in the beginning, God created, and then later down, way down some more books after them write them, so well, in the beginning was the Word. So we don't really sure what is it they're trying to insist when you come to the beginning. All right, so I that yes, this is that. I'm on Blak at the Blak Sunday School. I will be here on more Sundays, and you will get a notice. I'll put a little notice out. And at this forum, we engage in thought process, challenging binary systems of thought, challenging the either and either mentality when it could be neither, recognizing time, space, and mind as basic dimensions of reality. So once we want to speak about things that are happening in reality, you have to establish it in time and in space, and conceptually through the mind. If there is no time, there is no beginning. If there's no concept of time and space, then you can't tell me about when. So you're going to tell me once upon a time. Yeah, we're moving beyond those type of stories. We're understanding the language of allegories. We're understanding the language and the devices of English. These are some of the things we have to master. We have to master the tools of the colonizer, which is his language, before we fully be able to liberate ourselves from the constricts of that language. That same language that tells us that black, in a lower case, refers to a person. When we know that in the language, black, anything with a lower case represents an object. So we are confused and controlled by the language. We are also given an identity called Negro. And in the reality, identities are grounded in your culture and your gender and your race. So that's why the Chinaman can call himself a Chinese anywhere on the planet without even being born in China. And likewise, the other racial, mighty racial group of Indians, they always have them foundation in the race. So even today's construct of the black of the African, because there's a land called Negro land, There's China, and there's India, and there's Africa. So the African identity is what a lot of us are afraid of, because it is dark. And the dark skin, the darkness has been projected within the same biblical scripture as not good. Because we're later told that God created the sun and the light and separated the light from the darkness, because the light was good and the light was good. The implication is that if the light was good, then the darkness was not good. There's some subtle programming coming from the Sunday school curriculum in those very same stories. As I'm saying, and I will not be going too much all around the book trying to find anything to liberate consciousness now. And even just the Genesis, the Revelations, and the Exodus. And I suggest that the Revelations more than likely come before the Genesis. It's in that same book you hear about great cities made out of all kind of jewels. And when you look at the jewelry and the minerals, all those minerals are in Africa. So it looks like a story, something that happened long, 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 long before the Adam and Eve Genesis. Which is why you had so many millions of people on the earth already before that story could take hold. So, I'm on Blak. Yeah, we went a little bit over time, but so it goes. See? So, if you have any support in your thinking, give me a note. Come on, you can make a link. So we're gonna go out again. We're gonna go out with the original song of this school. Yeah, this is a theme song. I Blak. Out. Metamorphosis. Keep your ear out. Keep your eyes on I Blak School channel. Metamorphosis will be coming through.